All life is sorrowful, is the first Buddhist saying, and it is. It wouldn't be life if there were not temporality involved, which is sorrow, loss, loss, loss.
That's a pessimistic move.
Well, I mean, you can say yes to it, say it's great this way. I mean, it's the way God intended it.
You don't really believe that?
But this is the way it is. And I don't believe anybody intended it, but this is the way it is. And Joyce's wonderful line, history is a nightmare from which I'm trying to awake. And the way to awake from it is not to be afraid and to recognize, as I did in my conversation with that Hindu guru or teacher that I told you of, that all of this as it is as it has to be, and it is a manifestation of the eternal presence in the world.
And I'm going to be reading from his book a few excerpts. And basically what he says in the beginning is that the chief thing or the chief idea is that in order to become a different being, man must want it eagerly. He must long for it for a long time. And this is what happened to me. I don't know why I had the longing for truth. It just appears, and we'll see why. But he goes on to say, a passing desire or a vague desire based on dissatisfaction with the external world will not create a sufficient impulse. Right? So, but in order for man to truly know himself, he must have a strong desire within him to find out the truth of what he is, what life is about. Because this speaks to the essence of all things. And so he says here in the book, man does not know himself. He does not know his limitations or his possibilities. He does not even know to how great an extent he does not know himself. Most people, that's the end of the quote. Most people walk around already assuming they know who they are. I'm this man from this state, from this country. My mom and dad is this. My auntie and uncle are this. My grandpa and grandpa are that. I'm half this, half that, or part this, part that. I come from this continent. This is not what we mean. I'm going to keep reading. Quote, it says, man has invented many machines, and he knows that a complicated machine needs he knows that a complicated machine needs sometimes years of careful study before one can use it or control it. But he does not apply this knowledge to himself, although he himself is a much more complicated machine than any machine he has invented. He has all sorts of wrong ideas about himself. First of all, he does not realize that he actually is a machine. End quote. What is Ouspensky saying here? That man does not know he is a machine. This is what I said in my last video, in that people believe they are something they're not. Okay, a machine runs automatically. It's an automaton, right? Man does not realize this about himself, so he what the mind does, because the mind is a tricky thing. The mind assumes that what he is the machine. And so he goes on to say, quote, what does it mean that man is a machine? It means that he has no independent movements, inside or outside of himself. He is a machine which is brought into motion by external influences and external impacts. All his movements, actions, words, ideas, emotions, moods, and thoughts are produced by external influences. By himself, he is just an automaton with a certain store of memories of previous experiences and a certain amount of energy. we must understand that man can do nothing. End quote. Man does not do anything. Do you understand? It's like me claiming I am the wind. The wind passes, the wind comes and the wind goes. I did not control it. It's the same with your ideas, your thoughts, your feelings, your body, your everything about you. It arises and it subsides. And you claim it as you. It's as if a man would claim he is the wind. How ignorant would that sound to somebody? But man can do nothing of himself. This is what the 19th century sage said, Ramana Maharshi, that no individual can do anything of his own will. He said, relax and notice the divine will. Ouspensky goes on to say, but he does not realize this, meaning man does not realize that he cannot do anything. He assumes that he does it. He believes that he has free will. He says, but he does not realize this. He ascribes to himself the capacity to do. This is the first wrong thing that man ascribes to himself. And he's speaking of the act of free will. Man believes he is the one willing all the movements. He believes he has control and will of his life, which in fact he does not. And this is the main job of the ego. This is the ego. This is what must be sacrificed or seen through. The ego, the idea that around a small circle of experiences I have, this is what I call me. Because this is what keeps every man and woman in suffering. But as spiritual books say, in the kingdom of God, there is no suffering. This is the main thing that keeps a man in suffering. Because you feel like you have control. You know, it's a deep sense of, I feel like I'm in control. It's a deep sense of an illusion. Speak a sentence. Speak a sentence, right? And while you're speaking the sentence, see if you can know the last word that's about to come up, and you will see that you don't know it. Words are just happening. But yet you say it's you. This is a strong illusion of the ego or the false self that does not exist. He goes on to say, this must be understood very clearly. Man cannot do. Everything that man thinks he does really happens. It happens exactly as it rains or it thaws. In the English language, there are no impersonal verbal forms which can be used in relation to human actions. So we must continue to say that man thinks, reads, writes, loves, hates, starts wars, fights, and so on. Actually, all this happens. End quote. And I remember I was on a panel one time and I was talking to some brothers and I said, well, look at when you just open your eyes, how nobody does seeing. Seeing just happens. These sights just happen. Sounds, nobody does hearing. The hearing of my voice is just happening. You're not doing hearing. Hearing is a happening. All happens. Thoughts happen. Actions happen. No one is doing. Yet man cannot see through this illusion. Let me continue reading. Quote, man cannot move, think, or speak of his own accord. He is a marionette pulled here and there by invisible strings. If he understands this, he can learn more about himself, and possibly then things may begin to change for him. But if he cannot realize and understand his utter mechanicalness, or if he does not wish to accept it as a fact, he can learn nothing more, and things cannot change for him. Man is a machine, but a very peculiar machine. He is a machine which, in right circumstances and with right treatment, can know that he is a machine. And this is what, again, is awakening. Awakening out of this dream state that you are this machine, because you're really not. And we're going to do a thought experiment to show you how you are trapped in this sleep, in this automation, that you are this person and you don't realize it. You're not conscious of it. Many men, even the most intelligent men, are stuck in this paradigm. They are not conscious of it, because consciousness is prior to intelligence. Quote, first of all, what man must know is that he is not one, he is many. He has not one permanent, unchangeable me, or as he says, I, or ego. Because you are constantly changing. You as the human constantly is in motion. As I said on my prior video, you're a constant verb, a constant action, You are not a noun, right? You are forever changing. The body's changing, the mind's changing, the feelings change, right? He goes on to say, this illusion of unity or oneness is created in man first by the sensation of one physical body, meaning you continuously have a feeling of a sensation of a body, and by his name, which you're continuously called by this name, which in normal cases always remains the same, and a third by the number of mechanical habits which are implanted in him by education or acquired by imitation. Having always the same physical sensations, hearing always the same name, and noticing in himself the same habits and inclinations he had before, he believes to be always the same. Man, and this is exactly what I said in my last video, that you tie. And I'm speaking from experience because I was once there. I know that it's like an invisible iron thread you wrap around all these sensations and thoughts, and you call it a me. You're tied together, and even the feeling of a body. The feeling of the body you have now is not the same feeling of the body when you had when you were 5, when you used to climb trees and do all this. So then Ouspensky goes on to speak of states of consciousness. He says, let us return to the states of consciousness which really exist. The first is sleep. The second is waking sleep, or relative consciousness. The first, as I have said, is purely subjective. It's a subjective state. The second, which is waking, or waking sleep as he calls it, is less subjective. But it cannot be said that man is awake in this state, because he is very strongly influenced by dreams, meaning he's awake, but he's still living in illusion, and really lives more in dreams than in fact. All the absurdities and all the contradictions of people and of human life in general become explained when we realize that people live in sleep, do everything in sleep, and do not know that they are asleep, because they believe they're awake. They're walking around in the world. They believe they're awake. They believe because they have knowledge of a book or some knowledge of a science that they are awake. He says it is useful to remember that this is the inner meaning of many ancient doctrines. The best known to us is Christianity, or the gospel teachings, in which the idea that men live in sleep and must first of all awake is the basis of all the explanations of human life, although it is rarely understood as it should be understood, in this case, literally. And this is the essence of all spiritual teaching, to awaken. That's why in most Eastern philosophies and religions, they speak of enlightenment, meaning the light has been turned on, you have awoken. The Bible speaks of men being asleep or being dead as well, even while they're awake. This is the state of the majority of man, because they are not conscious of they're not conscious of the fact that they are living on automation, on an automatic go, and that you are not this person that you believe yourself to be. And how can we prove it? We're going to prove it by a thought experiment. I'm going to prove to you that you do not control your thoughts, and that thoughts are almost, as it were, fed into you, and you believe in them and take them to be you and live in them without ever being conscious of it. So for right now, wherever you're at, sit down, and I want you to, for 60 seconds, and it won't take this long because usually by 10 to 20 seconds you're already gone off. But for 60 seconds, I want you to sit, eyes closed, and just focus on the stillness or the blankness or the blackness of your eyes being closed without any thought coming in. Do not add any thought into this 60-second experiment. And see if you can focus on the blackness of that space with your eyes closed for 60 seconds without any thought intruding, without being carried away by any thought and going into that thought like, okay, I'm hungry, but what should I get to eat? Or whatever the thought may be. And let's see if you can do it for 60 seconds. Now, what you probably notice is that within that 60 seconds, thoughts came and took your mind away, and you began to think about other things like, why am I even doing this meditation? Or, what am I going to do after this? Or the color red comes up and you start thinking about red, or a light comes and you start focusing on the light and you're not focusing on what you were told to focus on. And then you go, whatever thought pops up that you did not choose, you go with that thought and it carries you away. And this is how most of the world lives. Thoughts come in, they get carried away by them. They start thinking about them, go into them. Another thought comes in, they get swayed this way. An action comes, makes a thought come. And this is how mankind operates. Mankind in all his ways are a movement of one universe. You do not control your words. You cannot control your thought. And when you realize this, when you realize that you are none of these things, they are all actions apart from you, you begin to separate yourself, or you begin to, what is called in Holy Script, surrender to God. You surrender to the will of the one that moves all these things. And what you'll realize is, in the end, that you are that will. Not you, the person you thought you were. Not you, the human. The human has no will. He is moved by the all. You are a complete movement of the all. And so, I thought it was interesting that in this book, as I began to read, he hit on a lot of the points I made in my previous video. And so I just wanted to bring that out, not to make this too long. Hopefully it was informational and insightful. Peace.
God is within you. It's simple, inherent divinity intrinsic. Forget clerics and heresies. Encrypted in your genes is your heritage from mystical beings and seraphims. Verily your conscience may be limited, but your subconscious is infinite, like the expansion of the cosmos. Man is God's host, women is the goddess, in osmosis with nature. We are celestial bodies, astral bodhisattvas. Your body is a temple like Gaia's. Keep it clean and gleaming. Don't get caught up in Maya's demons. Believe in your higher being, not in liars scheming. Aspire to the meaning of existence. You're divine and I mean this with insistence. Gorgeous minded like flawless diamonds. Sordid times we live in, so soar and shine like prisms above them. Love the men and women that surround you. Drug dens and sinning all around you. It astounds you, but my speeches ground you. I'm trying to teach you to forget what you know and speak true from the depths of your soul. Blessed be the olden days of golden ages, filled with the scrolls of sages. Nowadays are filled with molded knaves. Still be bold and brave in these fields of the soulless.